Quarterback is no longer a set it and forget it position. Matchups are key and vary rankings from week to week. So we're here to walk you through the week 4 rankings and ensure you're starting the right guys. Tom, we're going to go tier by tier, starting off at the top, the S tier. It's the same two guys every week, isn't it? Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. Enough said?
Well, yeah, pretty much. I mean, like, you look particularly at Lamar, 29 points, 26 points, 27 points, and even in, disappointing circumstances last week where he could have got the ball out more, still racking up 27 points. So he is almost 3 points clear of Josh Allen. Josh Allen obviously had that disappointing week in week 2 where he only scored 12 points, but outside of that, 38 points, 23 points. And this week, the Bills, they're 16-point favorites. The Ravens are going into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, who they've never beaten in Kansas since like 2012. But the way Lamar's playing and the way the Ravens offense is playing when it clicks, you can't fade these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just set, forget. Let's move on to the A tier. So this is where things perhaps get a little bit more interesting. We've got Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Caleb Williams, and Drake May. Before we get onto those two sophomore quarterbacks that round out the tier, let's start with Justin Herbert. He's been playing some phenomenal football and amazing for fantasy, but had some really tough matchups for opposing quarterbacks as well. Are you expecting this could be the emergence of him and maybe we start sneaking into that S tier?
Yeah, I think that Justin Herbert's definitely showing us that he belongs in that kind of conversation with him. And I think before long, it'll be one of those cases where we start hearing the MVP drum beats for him, particularly because he's never won it before. So there's less fatigue around guys like Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And you look at the games which Justin Herbert's had these performances in, as you mentioned, they've come in tough environments. They've come against the Broncos, they've come against the Chiefs, they've come against the Raiders, who, whilst not an elite defense by any means, they are quite spicy and they have their moments. This week, you talk about going and playing the Chargers. Yes, they're traveling across the country, which can occasionally be a slight worry. But the Giants favored allowed a league high 106 yards to opposing slot receivers. What do the Chargers do well? Throw to their slot receivers, and they're so heavily focused on their receivers. Maybe we see more of Justin Herbert rushing. Last week was the first week we hadn't seen much of that. And of course, that kind of coincides with him putting up his lowest fantasy score of the season. So maybe if we get a little bit more rushing again, then next week we can start looking at bumping him into that superstar tier.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's touch on these two sophomores. So Caleb Williams, currently the QB3 in fantasy points at the position, hasn't scored fewer than 18 points. Drake May, the QB6, hasn't scored fewer than 15.8 and averaging 20.8 per game. Are these two emerging and they're those, quarterbacks that you can set and forget? Or have you got any concerns that this could just be a blip and they may regress?
I feel like most people, when they kind of zoomed out this week and looked at overall stats and bits like that, much as we do, it was a little bit of a surprise to see Caleb Williams up there at QB3. And obviously the 29 points in week 3 massively helps that. But I'm okay with it. Like, we knew it wasn't going to be completely smooth out the gate. Learning a new offense, there's still holes within this Bears team. But what we've seen so far has been enough that we can start putting a bit of faith in it. The Raiders, they allow a league high 85% completion rate to the slot. So maybe that's somewhere which Caleb Williams keeps targeting. We're seeing Luther Burden and Colston Loveland integrate more. Last week was the first time that either of them hit a double-digit target share. So as they start to be a more well-rounded offense, maybe things start to click a little bit easier. And yeah, maybe Caleb Williams is a set and forget it quarterback. As for Drake May, I mean, we've been very high on Drake May here. You, me, Tyler, we've all been big fans of what he did last year. It was great to see him rushing a bit more last week after not doing so much in week 2. And the Panthers are a defense that I think maybe I've underestimated slightly at times, but they do allow the fourth, they allow you to put up points unless you're Michael Penix. So there's enough there for me to think, yeah, I'm not going to worry about starting Drake May. And Drake May's my quarterback in my home league, and I haven't once thought about moving on to somebody else yet.
Yeah, well, I drafted Drake May in my home league and dropped him after week 1. So yeah, I'm feeling slightly regretful about that one, shall we say? If you are finding us for the first time, though, welcome in. We walk you through every single position of importance, rankings every single week, plus dynasty shows, redraft shows, and of course in the off-season best ball as well. Hit that subscribe button; you will not forget it. The third tier, the B tier. Jordan Love, Bo Nix, Daniel Jones. Now, Jordan Love has arguably the best matchup in all of fantasy football, and yet we've got him here in the third tier, Tom. So why is it about Jordan Love that we're hating on this week?
So the Packers just aren't as pass happy as we'd like them to be. We want these teams who are really going to lean into the pass and really complement that with varied, superstar wide receivers, superstar tight ends, superstar scoring points. And that's just not what we're really getting from the Packers. Now, obviously, last week against the Browns was an incredibly tough matchup. And every week that goes by, it's not the teams who play them underperforming. It's that the Browns are just a really good defense. Now, I do not think that the Cowboys are a superstar defense. Obviously, they are just letting people pass on them all over. And Dallas, they lead the league in passing plays allowed at 20 plus yards. But where we are with Jordan Love is that the Packers seem to just be leaning into the run again. And with no Jaden Reed out there, Tucker Kraft looked really banged up last week. I still have a few concerns that maybe he's not going to be 100% this week. It's a little bit harder to trust him because I feel like what we saw from the Packers last year is that they will just go into their shell and lean on the run at times.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the matchup, and I'm just a little bit concerned that they're just going to get up, get the win, and then see out the game after particularly what happened last week. I feel like they're not messing around this week. I write a weekly review article where I review every single fantasy relevant player. Through 3 weeks, I've been pretty scathing on Bo Nix. I've been really unimpressed with him, with this offense, and what they're asking to do. I've said several times that it feels like Sean Payton has still got the handcuffs on him. But decent matchup this week, some rushing upside. Do you think that this could be the kind of the breakout game for Bo Nix in his sophomore year?
It needs to be because he's currently QB 25 in average points for the quarterback position. And really, you could make a case for we're being slow to move him down. Like, frankly, we're not getting any of the kind of fantasy performances that we need. He's had 2 of his 3 games. He's been below 14 points, including one where he was down at 9 points. Now, obviously, yes, the Bengals, as you mentioned, are a terrible defense. They do have a fairly good kind of front this year. Trey Hendrickson looks pretty good. Shamar Stewart, when he's out there, is looking pretty good as well. But I think the Broncos' offensive line should be able to cope well enough with that. The Bengals, we saw how absolutely they just got drubbed last week by the Vikings, and I would think that Sean Payton is going to go back to the Broncos' home stadium and want to really lay the hammer down on the Bengals. So, yeah, I think that this is a good week to start Bo Nix, and I think that Troy Franklin is a nice start as well.
Yeah, like that stack for sure. I'm rounding out the B tier. The QB4 overall, who had that on their bingo card 4 weeks ago? Daniel Jones. I've been so impressed with his ability from the pocket. Yes, we're getting the rushing, but his ability to operate on time, but also push the ball downfield is something that I haven't seen for the last couple of years in New York. You fully expecting this streak, shall we say, to continue?
Yeah, much like yourself, I've just been really impressed by what he's doing well. This is a tough game, and it's probably not one where it maybe hits quite its true ceiling. But you look at what Daniel Jones has done and the opponents that he's gone up against so far, and we kind of just have to trust him, and moving him down beyond this tier based on what we've seen would be a little bit crazy to me. I think that when you look at the Rams, they're a good defense, but they're not necessarily elite against anything. And they haven't given up a lot of fantasy points to the quarterback yet, but they're kind of middle tier. So I'm not sure that I really have a good enough feeling about the Rams defense yet to be scared of starting anyone against them.
Yeah, so moving into the C tier, we've got Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Geno Smith, Jared Goff, and Brock Purdy. We're recording this before the Thursday night game, so if you're watching this afterwards, we're not going to touch on Kyler Murray or Geno Smith because they've probably played, but Let's start with Baker Mayfield. No Mike Evans. Do we think that the emergence of Emeka Egbuka is enough, and potentially Chris Godwin back this week, is enough for Baker Mayfield to continue to produce, or have you got any nerves there, Tom?
Yeah, it's just tricky. And look, we've been down on Baker Mayfield most of the summer. But like last week, we've talked about how the way he's playing, you kind of just have to go with it and accept it for now. But when you take Mike Evans away from there, and you are talking about a rookie playing against the Vic Fangio defense, it is going to be tricky for Egbuka, and it is going to be tricky for Baker Mayfield, particularly with the offensive line just looking incredibly banged up. I know there's some talk that Tristan Wirfs could come back. I know there's some talk that Chris Godwin could come back, but I just don't believe it. We've seen the Bucs in the past lie about things. I mean, let's not forget that the Bucs said that Chris Godwin could be back in time for the playoffs, possibly. Like, until I see Chris Godwin out there, I will be very skeptical that he's going to play. And if this is just Egbuka, Sterling Shepard, Cade Otton, then yeah, that doesn't spell a lot of greatness. I mean, particularly with the fact that you'd imagine Egbuka or Godwin is going to play heavily from the slot, and the Eagles are absolutely elite against the slot. They allow only 29 yards per game to the slot, 3.07 yards per attempt. They close off that area of the field. They are last in situation neutral pass rate, or third last, sorry. So that makes it difficult for teams to really get volume of plays in games against the Eagles. And Bucky Irving as well is regressing, partly because of the offensive line, maybe as well, and because he's seeing higher volume. So if you're not able to play the way you want, then it's going to be very tricky. And I think that this game just looks like a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I think one thing to point out as well is traditionally the Eagles, you've been able to get after them because of the weakness at their second outside corner spot. They've got Quinion Mitchell, who's phenomenal, but normally they play sides. Last week, Quinion Mitchell followed Devontae Adams 80% of the time when they played man coverage. If he's going to follow Emeka Egbuka, if he goes inside, he's got Cooper DeJean. If he's playing outside, he's got Quinion Mitchell. Where's Baker Mayfield going with the ball? I think that's going to be a real baptism of fire, should we say, for the rookie. And I think it's going to be difficult for Baker Mayfield. So, yeah, I'm not as confident on Baker this week. And if, one quarterback league, I'm probably looking for something alternative to start over Baker. Moving over to Jared Goff, though. So the third lowest pass rate over expected through 3 weeks in the NFL with the Lions. We know that they're going to run the ball. They're going to continue to run the ball in neutral scripts. Any concern that, I guess, for Goff in this matchup, do you think there's enough volume that he can get home, or is that why we've got him dropped down in this C tier?
It's really tricky because you look at what the Browns have done well. They've stuffed the run completely, haven't they? Like, they did it not only to Josh Jacobs, but they did it to Derrick Henry. They can take away that element of the game at the minute. But where Lamar Jackson had success was in the passing game and pushing the ball downfield. That wasn't something that Jared Goff was able to do last week because the Ravens played this complete cowardly defense where they just sat the secondary back and were refusing to give up the deep ball after giving up a couple of completions to Jameson Williams. So maybe there's a little bit more of that available to Jared Goff. I think it's tricky, and I don't think we're going to want to start many players against the Browns week to week, but I mean, Jared Goff, that he has this fantastic upside. We saw it in week 2 where he scored 34 points, but equally we've had games of 11.9 and 12.7, which is not what you want when you're in a 1 QB league. You can survive it just about in a Superflex league, but even then you're probably looking at your bench and going, I had a wide receiver who scored me 15 points who I wish I started. If I have a way around not playing Jared Goff this week, then I'm probably going to take it.
Yeah, and then rounding out the tier, we've got Brock Purdy, someone who we disagree on quite a lot based on our rankings. I've got him up as my QB 9. He is down as your QB 16. It's looking like he's going to play this week. Tom, what is it about this Jacksonville matchup that's got you concerned and got him ranked all the way down at 16?
So everybody's losing their mind about Trevor Lawrence, and I'm sure we'll come on to him, and Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter and all that situation. And nobody's paying attention to the fact that the Jaguars defense, pretty damn good. So far they're second in EPA per play allowed, they're second in PFF defensive grade, and they're fourth in defensive DVOA. Like those are very good metrics, and not all of them, as they're taking into account more than just for opponent. They're taking in overall efficiency and stuff. And I think that the Jags are going to do a good enough job against the Niners. Now, I'm not saying they're going to beat the Niners or anything like that, but I'm just saying that I think that they can take enough out of this game that when Brock Purdy perhaps isn't 100%, isn't at his full array of pass catches around him, that I'm not sure that I see him being kind of massively fantasy relevant this week.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't hugely disagree with a lot of what you said there. I think my ranking of him at QB9 probably speaks to how much I dislike the likes of Baker, Kylo, Geno this week. It's not, he doesn't deserve to be QB9. It's that there's 8 quarterbacks that I'd rather have over him this week. So it's not my favorite week in terms of ranking the quarterbacks. Worth mentioning as well, while we're here on Brock Purdy, who we're expecting to play, 2 guys that we've currently not got ranked who could well end up playing this week: Justin Fields, Jaden Daniels. For me, Jaden Daniels would slot into the A tier. Justin Fields would probably be at the top of this C tier, maybe creeping into the B tier. Would you agree with those?
Yeah, I think that Justin Fields has that prime matchup against the Miami Dolphins, who will have the second most fantasy points to the quarterback position. They are just atrocious across the board when it comes to their defense. So there's a big part of me that thinks, could he be the best QB player on the slate? Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he went out there and had a QB1 overall kind of week. Particularly as Miami have kind of got slightly going, at least on offense, and Miami play quick. So maybe they could drag the Jets into a more reasonable paced game, at least. So there's part of me that definitely would like to put Justin Fields at least in the B tier. And then Jaden Daniels is one where it's like, as of Wednesday, he's tried to play, trying to practice, and he says he's not sure if he'd have to wear a brace if he did play this week. The Falcons, their defense is pretty decent. At least they've got a good pass rush. Obviously, last week things did not go the way that they wanted. They've allowed the 4th fewest QB fantasy points through 3 games. They've been a fairly fast-paced team. Maybe with the Commanders' defense not being great, it forces a bit more of an interesting game. But Jaden Daniels is actually somebody I'd be a little bit more worried about if he's less than 100%. I think that we see him rush less. And for that reason, I'd probably put him in the C tier.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, we saw it last year, didn't we? When he wasn't 100%, he hardly rushed, and it massively impacted his fantasy ceiling. If you do have any start sit questions and you want our thoughts, get them in the comments down below. Tom and I will answer 100% of the questions we get all the way up to kickoff to help you nail those lineup decisions. Moving into the D tier, we've got Matthew Stafford, Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Sam Darnold, Trevor Lawrence, and Michael Penix. I feel like, Tom, you've hinted at already. We've got to start with Trevor Lawrence. Quite an interesting conversation in our Discord today, I thought, with some people around the industry, shall we say, dunking on Trevor Lawrence. I've been a noted Trevor Lawrence believer. I still think that he's incredibly talented. Yes, there's some missed throws. Yes, there's some brain farts and some infuriating things, but he's not being helped out around him. Brian Thomas, I think the stat I quoted, there's 20 wide receivers who have got multiple drops so far this year. 25% of those 20 play for the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's an obscene volume of drops. We saw last Sunday Brian Thomas run the wrong route twice. Travis Hunter not have a clue what route he's supposed to run once. Do you think that there's some hope for Trevor Lawrence, or do you think this is, potentially the beginning of the end?
I mean, this is the Shane Waldron experience, isn't it? We've seen this in Chicago last year. We've seen it before, like hints of it in Seattle. And if Liam Cohen doesn't get it under control quickly, then yeah, it could be. But as you mentioned, like Warren Sharp put these stats out on Twitter. Out of 270 qualifying quarterbacks since 2020, Jaguars receivers through week 3 have the highest drop rate across that sample, the highest rate of total receiver error, and 32% of Trevor Lawrence's incompletions are blamed on his wide receivers. Like, that is just a wild number. Like, I do think that Trevor Lawrence has been playing okay at times, but he's being let down. Now, in this game where you're playing against the 49ers, who obviously will be without Bosa, who's done for the year, maybe Trevor Lawrence can get something going, but it just looks like the wide receivers are on a completely different page. Dimey Brown's probably going to miss this game as well. I believe he's injured, which then just throws more responsibility onto guys who we wouldn't have expected it from, because Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter just aren't getting it done. And as you mentioned in your Dynasty Buys and Sells video, there is a slight worry that Travis Hunter looks a little bit more comfortable playing cornerback right now.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it all off season, didn't we? About him potentially being more a full-time corner that sprinkles in some offense. And this last week, he played more snaps on defense than he did in offense. So I do wonder if it's heading that way. The other player, I guess, that we should probably touch on, some people may have him as their quarterback in those 1 QB leagues, Dak Prescott. Obviously lost CeeDee Lamb and a pretty horrendous matchup against the Green Bay Packers. Is there any world you're comfortable starting him, or is it a case of you need to get away from him if you can, even dropping him potentially in a 1 QB league?
Yeah, I mean, like when it came to putting these rankings together, I kind of looked where I landed with Dak, and then it's like, right, who am I starting him above? And you go, well, I can't really push him anywhere. And because of that, part of it is the Packers. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to the quarterback position. Green Bay haven't allowed a 20-plus yard passing play so far. Green Bay run the ball at the second highest rate. So when they have it, they're going to stifle the game. When they're not on offense, their defense looks excellent. Micah Parsons is absolutely going to be riled up for this game, and I think that he's going to be coming hard after Dak Prescott. And the Cowboys' offensive line, they've struggled. They've beaten up. They've got a few injuries there, and I think that really is going to start affecting things, particularly when you've only got George Pickens, who didn't look entirely on the same page as Dak Prescott last week the whole time. I mean, it kind of worked out on that touchdown, but I think they still have a lot that they need to do very quickly to get up to speed.
Yeah, and then in our E tier, we have got Tua, Jackson Dart, Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota, and Tyrod Taylor. We've got to touch on the rookie in his first game. Jackson Dart, we've seen him sprinkle in a couple of QB options, a couple of replays in spot duty, shall we say, for Russell Wilson. Now going to get the full start. Andrew Thomas back healthy. Malik Neighbors looking like a star again. Do we think that Jackson Dart is maybe too low here in tier E? Or for me, I wanted to get him higher, but I'm just a little bit nervous what to expect.
Yeah, and I think you could probably push him maybe up ahead of CJ Stroud if you wanted to be aggressive. I mean, CJ Stroud isn't a fantasy football quarterback at this point in his career. Like,
Not sure he's an NFL one either at the moment.
It's definitely looking shaky. But Dart, we know, is going to give us plenty with his legs. I was listening to NFL Daily today, and John Rodriguez made this brilliant point about how much Jackson Dart played in the preseason. They gave him a hell of a lot of snaps because they really wanted him to be able to learn quickly. And I know we come down on different sides of this. I am always team play your rookies early. I think if you're worried about Andrew Thomas not being out there at tackle, then your quarterback probably didn't have it anyway. So why not get him out there? Why not open up the playbook? Because they did use a different part of the playbook when he was out there compared to Russell Wilson in preseason. The opponent is not necessarily an easy one. Like, it would have been nice if he had a gimme matchup against a softer defense, but the Chargers, I think it's just best to get on with it, and let's see what he can do. And he does have Malik Neighbors, who should make his life easy if he gets the ball out quick to Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, I think, a world of success for Jackson Dart is very simple. A few QB run plays, a few zone reads, hand the ball off to Cam Scatterbo as often as possible. And when you're dropping back, throw it to Malik Neighbors. It's as simple as that. And hopefully he should be able to succeed. I do think perhaps this is a conversation for offline, Tom, but I struggle to understand how you can slag off most of the NFL for being poorly run and ruining a load of quarterbacks, but then also recommend that they start and push rookie quarterbacks in immediately. But maybe we'll have a conversation about that over a beer one day. Moving into our final tier, tier F, we got Spencer Rattler, Jake Browning, Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, Cam Ward. These guys are unstartable for me, even in Superflex leagues. Would you tend to agree?
Yeah, one guy that, like, I'm having a little bit of a tough time with is Spencer Rattler because he averages 15.3 fantasy points. He's been over 11.5 in each of them. And because the Saints play fast, each week it feels like there's potential now. Even this week, if that comes in garbage time against Josh Allen, maybe he's kind of startable. And it's like I would like to have got him into my top 24 so that he's startable in Superflex at least. And then looking at guys like Joe Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, the old, like, Tom Brady tricked these guys into thinking they can be good later on in their career, and it's just not happening. And Cam Ward, I just want to quickly touch on because I expected Cam Ward to be better. I expected the offensive line in Tennessee to be better from the get-go, and it hasn't been, and it's been miserable. He's not getting any help from Calvin Ridley, and the whole play calling situation, the fact that the Titans are moving away from Callahan calling the plays and skipping over the offensive coordinator to the QB coach is quite a strange thing. Apparently, the QB coach called plays for the Raiders and interim coach a couple of years back. So maybe it's because he has more play calling experience. Either way, the vibes in Tennessee aren't great. It sounds like a lot of Tennessee fans are done with Callahan now and would like to be rid of him. So, yeah, I don't think it's going to be an easy week for Cam Ward because the Texans' defensive line is beastly, as we know. We know they're good in coverage. So I would like to see a performance from him soon, but I'm not sure it comes on the road against the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, I think Cam Ward's been playing some really good football. The problem is that we came into the season expecting the offensive line to be average at least, him to have potentially one, above average pass catcher and a well schemed offense, and none of those things are playing out. The offensive line has been horrendous. Calvin Ridley's, a vacant person, should we say? The only bright spot is the rookie wide receiver, Ayumanor, and that's about it. So, yeah, I still believe in Cam Ward. I still think the talent's there. I still think he's playing well. I just think he's being let down by every single thing around him. But that is it. 32 quarterbacks ranked. If you've got any questions, get them in the comment below. And let's keep it simple. Like, subscribe,